In the crystalline caverns of Proxima 742, where light danced through translucent formations and created symphonies of color, lived a species known as the crystallites. These beings, composed of living crystal, communicated through resonant frequencies that rippled through their bodies like music through air. Among them was Nereus, a servant-class crystallite whose core had been damaged during extraction work, leaving them unable to produce the melodic frequencies that were the foundation of their society. Nereus worked in the great halls of the Crystal Spire, the towering center of crystallite civilization. Their role was simple: maintain the harmonic chambers where important decisions were made, polish the resonant crystals, and stay out of sight. The other crystallites barely acknowledged Nereus's presence, their own frequencies adjusting to frequencies that showed discomfort or dismissal whenever Nereus approached. The arrival of the human diplomatic mission changed everything. Dr. Marcus Walsh, lead xenobiologist for the United Earth Coalition, stepped off the transport vessel with wide eyes and an even wider smile. Unlike his colleagues who immediately began setting up their sophisticated equipment, Marcus carried only a simple device of his own design, a frequency analyzer that could translate various waves into visual patterns. During the first diplomatic meeting, while the human ambassadors attempted to establish trade relations with the Crystallite Council, Marcus noticed something unusual. In the corner of the harmonic chamber, a servant was cleaning, but their movements created subtle disturbances in the air patterns that his device detected as complex mathematical sequences. Marcus approached Nereus during a break in the negotiations, his device humming softly. "Hello," he said, keeping his voice low to avoid disturbing the sensitive acoustic balance of the chamber. "I'm Marcus. I couldn't help but notice the patterns you're creating." Nereus froze, their crystalline form shifting slightly to reflect uncertainty. No one had directly addressed them in years, let alone shown interest in their presence. Marcus held up his analyzer, showing the screen where Nereus's movements had been translated into flowing equations. "See these?" Marcus pointed to the patterns. "They're not random. They're structured like a language. You're communicating, aren't you? Just not in the way the others do." Nereus's surface rippled with tiny fractal patterns, a sign of emotional response that Marcus had learned to recognize. He adjusted his device, fine-tuning it to capture more subtle variations. "Would you be willing to help me understand?" Over the next few days, while the diplomatic talks continued above, Marcus spent every free moment with Nereus in the lower levels of the Crystal Spire. He discovered that Nereus's inability to produce standard frequencies had led to the development of a completely different form of communication, one based on micro-vibrations and mathematical harmonics that were too subtle for the other crystallites to notice. "This is extraordinary," Marcus exclaimed one evening after successfully translating one of Nereus's more complex patterns. "You've developed a completely new form of language. It's not just communication, it's art." Nereus's response created a cascade of beautiful equations across Marcus's screen, expressing both joy at being understood and fear of discovery. Through their growing understanding, Marcus learned that Nereus's position wasn't just that of a servant. They were essentially enslaved, bound by ancient laws that classified defective crystallites as property rather than people. Commander Josephine Reeves, the head of the diplomatic mission, noticed Marcus's frequent absences from the main proceedings. "Dr. Walsh," she confronted him one evening, "I hope these little side projects of yours aren't interfering with our primary mission." Marcus looked up from his data pad, his eyes bright with discovery. "Commander, what if I told you we've been approaching these negotiations all wrong? We've been talking to their leaders, but we've been missing an entire layer of their society, one that might hold the key to something far more valuable than trade agreements." As he showed her the translated patterns from his device, Nereus stood quietly in the background, their surface reflecting the ambient light in subtle, hopeful patterns. For the first time in their existence, someone was not just listening, but hearing the song they had always been singing, a song that would soon change both their worlds forever. Deep in the lower levels of the Crystal Spire, Marcus sat cross-legged on the smooth, crystalline floor, his frequency analyzer projecting a holographic display of shifting patterns. Neris moved with deliberate grace, their crystalline form casting prismatic shadows as they demonstrated a complex sequence of micro-vibrations. "That's it," Marcus whispered, making adjustments to his device. "The mathematical patterns you create, they're not just language, they're memories." The holographic display transformed the vibrations into a three-dimensional scene. A younger Neris working in the crystal mines, the moment of the accident that damaged their core, the isolation that followed. Commander Reeves had given Marcus 1 week to prove his discovery's worth. "If what you're saying is true," she had said, "it could revolutionize our understanding of crystallite culture. But if you're wrong, you could jeopardize months of diplomatic progress." Marcus worked tirelessly to refine his translation algorithms. Each session with Neris revealed new layers of complexity in their communication. The microvibrations weren't just carrying information. They were encoding entire sensory experiences, emotions, and abstract concepts into mathematical formulas. During one session, Dr. Thomas Harrison, the mission's chief physicist, joined them. His skepticism melted away as he watched the patterns unfold. "Incredible," he muttered, adjusting his glasses. "They're using quantum harmonics at a cellular level. The implications for information theory are staggering." Word of Marcus's work began to spread through the human delegation. Some nights, small groups would gather quietly in the lower chambers, watching in wonder as Neris shared stories of their people's history, tales that had never been recorded in the official archives because they came from the perspective of the servant class. But not everyone was pleased with these developments. High Resonator Crix, leader of the Crystallite Council, summoned Marcus to a private audience. The chamber's acoustics were perfectly tuned to amplify the resonator's authoritative frequencies. "Dr. Walsh," Crix's vibrations translated through Marcus's device, "your interest in our lower castes is becoming disruptive. These beings are simple tools. Their imperfections make them suitable only for basic labor. Your efforts to communicate with them are misguided." Marcus stood his ground. "With respect, High Resonator, what you call imperfection has led to innovation. Neris has developed a form of communication that could advance both our species' understanding of information processing." "You mistake adaptation for advancement," Crix responded, their crystalline form pulsing with dismissive harmonies. "These imperfect ones are kept in their place for the harmony of our society. Do not interfere with our natural order." That evening, Marcus found Neris in a state of agitation, their surface creating chaotic patterns he had never seen before. Through careful translation, he learned that other servant-class crystallites had been punished for showing interest in Neris's method of communication. "This has to stop," Marcus declared, his voice echoing softly in the chamber. He reached out, placing his hand near Neris's surface, feeling the subtle vibrations. "Your people deserve to be heard, all of them." Working through the night, Marcus and Dr. Harrison modified the frequency analyzer to capture and amplify Neris's patterns. They discovered that with the right adjustments, the microvibrations could be transformed into harmonics that even the most traditional crystallites could understand. The breakthrough came during a formal diplomatic session. As the council discussed trade agreements, Neris entered the chamber carrying Marcus's modified device. Before anyone could stop them, they activated it. The chamber filled with a complex harmony, mathematics made music, the song of the forgotten ones. The council members froze, their forms shimmering with shock as they recognized the depth and beauty of what they were experiencing. Through the device, Neris shared not just their own story, but the collected experiences of generations of servant-class crystallites, their hopes, their dreams, their untapped potential. Young council member Ven was the first to respond, their form resonating in sync with Neris's patterns. Others followed, creating a symphony of understanding that transcended traditional class boundaries. Even High Resonator Crix could not deny the power of what they were witnessing. Commander Reeves watched it all unfold, a slight smile on her face. She leaned toward Marcus and whispered, "Sometimes the greatest diplomatic breakthroughs come not from official channels, but from learning to listen to those who have been silenced." As the harmonies filled the crystal spire, Neris stood taller, their form glowing with newfound confidence. They had found their voice, and through it, they were helping to reshape their society. But even as celebration filled the chamber, Marcus noticed subtle discordant frequencies at the edges of his readings, warnings of resistance to come, of those who would fight to maintain the old order at any cost. The discovery in the council chamber had unexpected consequences. As Marcus reviewed the data from Neris's demonstration, he noticed something extraordinary hidden within the harmonic patterns. The servant class's unique method of communication wasn't just carrying messages. It was manipulating the crystalline structures around them at a molecular level. Dr. Harrison spent 3 days analyzing the readings before calling an urgent meeting with Marcus and Commander Reeves. "The servants aren't just communicating," he explained, gesturing to his calculations. "They're programming. Each microvibration can restructure the crystal matrices of their environment. They've essentially been maintaining this entire city through pure mathematics." The implications were staggering. The servant class, long dismissed as simple laborers, had been unconsciously preserving and evolving the crystal spire's architecture through their daily work. Their supposed imperfection had led to an evolutionary leap that the ruling class had never noticed. But not everyone was blind to this power. During a late-night session in the lower chambers, Neris shared a disturbing truth through their mathematical patterns. High-resonator Cricks had always known about their abilities. The accident that had damaged Neris's core hadn't been an accident at all. It was part of a generations-long program to create a subclass of crystallites whose abilities could be controlled and exploited. Marcus watched in horror as Neris revealed memories of other servants being deliberately damaged, their natural resonance frequencies altered to make them dependent on the ruling class. The entire social structure of the crystallites was built on an ancient crime. Professor Julian West, the mission's historian, connected the final pieces. "The earliest records of crystallite civilization show no class distinction," he explained to the human delegation. "The hierarchy only appeared after a period they call the Great Harmonizing. What we're seeing suggests this was actually a systematic subjugation of part of their population." As this truth began to spread through the servant class, subtle changes appeared in the crystal spire's architecture. Corridors began to shift, rooms reorganized themselves, and new chambers formed spontaneously. The servants, awakening to their true potential, were unconsciously reshaping their world. High-resonator Cricks called an emergency session of the council. "These disruptions threaten the very foundation of our society." Their frequencies boomed through the chamber. "The servant class must be contained before they destroy everything we've built." But when security forces tried to enter the lower levels, they found the crystal walls had sealed themselves, responding to the collective will of the servants within. The mathematics of revolution had begun to write itself into the very structure of their world. Commander Reeves faced a difficult decision. The United Earth Coalition's primary directive was non-interference in alien societies, but the evidence of systematic oppression was impossible to ignore. As she wrestled with this dilemma, Marcus made a shocking discovery that would change everything. "The resonance patterns," he explained, pointing to his latest readings, "they're not just affecting the crystal spire. They're reaching into space itself. The servants aren't just programmers, they're navigators. Their mathematical language can map and manipulate the quantum structure of space-time." The servant class had unknowingly developed the key to revolutionary faster-than-light travel, encoded within their very beings. This hidden gift had been the true reason for their subjugation, buried so deep that even their oppressors had forgotten its origin. As this revelation echoed through the crystal spire, Neris stood at the heart of a growing storm. Their simple quest to be heard had uncovered a truth that would reshape not just their society, but the future of interstellar travel. Yet in their mathematical patterns, Marcus sensed not triumph, but fear. They had seen this power abused before, and the weight of its responsibility now rested on their shoulders. The crystal spire hummed with tension as both humans and crystallites grappled with the implications of what had been discovered. Change was coming, but whether it would bring harmony or discord remained to be seen. In the deepening crisis, Neris's next decision would determine the fate of both their people and the future of human-crystallite relations. The crystal spire had become a battleground of frequencies. In the upper chambers, high resonator cricks rallied their loyalists, their harmonics pulsing with promises of maintained order and stability. Below, the servant class's mathematical songs grew stronger, their newfound power rippling through the crystalline walls. Marcus and Commander Reeves found themselves caught in the middle of an escalating crisis. Earth's governments, upon learning of the faster-than-light potential, were pressuring the delegation to secure access to the servant class's abilities. "We're sitting on the biggest discovery in human history," Admiral Parker declared via quantum comm, "and you're worried about alien politics." But Marcus had seen the pain in Neris's patterns. "They've been exploited for centuries," he argued in the emergency delegation meeting. "We can't perpetuate that cycle. There has to be another way." The situation reached its breaking point when a group of Crix's supporters attempted to force their way into the lower levels using amplified resonance weapons. The barriers the servants had created held, but the attack triggered something unexpected. Throughout the spire, ancient systems began to awaken, responding to the servants' distress. Dr. Harrison's instruments went wild. "The entire structure," he reported. "It's not just a city, it's a ship. The servants' mathematical language, it's not just for programming the local environment. They're the key to activating the entire vessel." The crystal spire shuddered as long-dormant engines began to power up. In the chaos, Neris revealed the final piece of their people's forgotten history. The crystallites had once been travelers among the stars, using their natural abilities to navigate the quantum fabric of space. The servant class were the descendants of the navigator caste, deliberately suppressed to prevent them from leading an exodus from their adopted home. High resonator Crix made one last desperate move, initiating a resonance cascade designed to shatter the servants' control over the spire. But they had underestimated the power of unity. Led by Neris, the servants joined their mathematical songs into a single, overwhelming harmony. The walls of the spire became transparent as crystal, revealing the mathematical beauty of space itself. Through their combined power, the servants weren't just controlling the structure. They were rewriting the local laws of physics, creating a bubble of altered space-time around the entire city. Commander Reeves watched in awe as fractal patterns of probability collapsed into new configurations. "Dr. Walsh," she said quietly, "I believe the choice has been taken out of our hands." The crystal spire, awakened to its true nature, began to rise. The servants' mathematics had unlocked not just faster-than-light travel, but the ability to choose their destination from an infinite array of possible futures. They were about to embark on their first journey in millennia. In the midst of the transformation, Neris approached Marcus with a complex mathematical pattern, an invitation. The servants had seen humanity's potential for understanding and compassion through him. They were offering a chance for humans and crystallites to explore the cosmos together, not as masters and servants, but as equals. High resonator Crix and their supporters found themselves faced with a choice: adapt to the new reality or remain behind on the planet's surface. The old hierarchy was dissolving, replaced by something more dynamic and inclusive. Young council member Venn stepped forward, their frequencies harmonizing with the servant's song, marking the beginning of a new era of cooperation. As the crystal spire prepared for its first jump through quantum space, Marcus stood beside Neris, watching the mathematical beauty of their combined futures unfold. The storm had brought not destruction, but transformation, and with it, the promise of adventures beyond imagination. The crystal spire hung in space like a jeweled pendulum, its surfaces refracting starlight in endless mathematical patterns. Inside, humans and crystallites worked side by side, learning to combine their unique perspectives into something greater than either had imagined possible. Neris had become a bridge between worlds, their once broken way of communication now recognized as the key to understanding the quantum language of the universe. They led a new council that included both former servants and ruling class members, their decisions guided by the complex harmonies of collective wisdom. Marcus found himself heading a joint research initiative, working with Dr. Harrison and a team of crystallite mathematicians to decode the principles behind their quantum navigation. Every jump through space, he explained to Commander Reeves, is actually a movement through pure mathematics. The servants weren't just maintaining the city, they were keeping alive the equations that make faster-than-light travel possible. The transformation of crystallite society hadn't been without its challenges. Some of the old guard, including high-resonator cricks, had chosen exile on the surface rather than accept change. But the majority had embraced the new order, discovering that their traditional harmonics could blend beautifully with the servants' mathematical songs. Young council member Ven had proven instrumental in helping others adapt, their natural ability to bridge different forms of communication making them an ideal diplomat. Under their guidance, a new form of education emerged, one that taught all crystallites to appreciate and use both traditional resonance and mathematical harmonics. The human delegation had also undergone profound changes. Commander Reeves had successfully argued for a new approach to interstellar relations, one that emphasized understanding and cooperation over exploitation. The United Earth Coalition, seeing the benefits of this partnership, had established the first Quantum Harmony Institute, where humans and crystallites could study together. Professor West found himself documenting a living renaissance, as the blending of cultures produced new forms of art, science, and philosophy. The Crystal Spire's architecture continued to evolve, shaped by the combined creativity of all its inhabitants. Spaces that had once been rigid and hierarchical became fluid and collaborative, reflecting the new spirit of their society. One evening, as the Spire prepared for another quantum jump, Neris shared a special pattern with Marcus. Through their mathematical language, they showed him a vision of possible futures, countless civilizations waiting to be discovered, each with their own unique ways of seeing and understanding the universe. "We were never meant to be masters or servants," Neris's patterns translated. "We were meant to be explorers, all of us together." The demonstration of transformation had spread far beyond the Spire. Other crystallite cities, hearing of the changes, had begun their own journeys of reconciliation. The mathematical songs of the former servant class echoed through crystal structures across the planet, awakening ancient memories and possibilities. Admiral Parker, who had once demanded immediate access to the servants' abilities, now stood in the Spire's observation chamber, watching the quantum equations dance across space. "Sometimes," he admitted to Commander Reeves, "the greatest power lies not in controlling something, but in learning to grow with it." As the Crystal Spire prepared to explore another region of space, Marcus reflected on how far they had come. What had begun as a simple act of listening had led to a revolution in understanding, proving that true communication could bridge any gap, heal any wound, and open doors to infinite possibilities. Neris, standing at the heart of the navigation chamber, their form glowing with complex equations, had found more than just a voice. They had helped create a symphony of unity that would echo through the cosmos. The once silent servant had become a teacher, showing both humans and crystallites that the greatest journeys begin with the simple courage to hear those who speak differently. The Crystal Spire pulsed with one final, beautiful harmony, a combination of all voices, all forms of communication blending into a single expression of hope and discovery. Then, wrapped in the mathematics of possibility, it vanished into the quantum foam, carrying its message of transformation to the stars.